Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast this week. This week, we wanted to talk about changing our minds, quitting, and if that makes us failures in terms of not being consistent with an environment or friendships. And something I have really grappled with in terms of my inconsistency in being able to stick to something is if changing your mind about a career or a relationship makes you a quitter or makes you a failure. And whether there are like signs you have outgrown somewhere or if they're just like things you're telling yourself about making it okay to change your mind. Because I feel like I've changed my mind a lot in my 20s and even my teens. I've been someone who's really struggled to like I've really had commitment issues with like jobs, especially in like situations, not so much my relationships. But in my 20s, I've definitely picked up on like signs that maybe I've outgrown somewhere or like I have changed compared to my environment that has not. And I wonder how we make it okay within ourselves to actually be okay with those decisions in terms of like actually leaving an environment, whether that's a workplace or leaving a relationship behind and like not feeling like a bad person basically and not beating yourself up for doing it. So we could start, I think, with jobs because I think that's something everyone struggles with, especially our generation, I think, in terms of I don't know anyone under the age of 40 who is like lifelong committed to their employer, if you know what I mean. Like, I feel like it was so normal in our parents' generations to find a workplace, stay loyal until you retire, and like that is it. Like, you're defined by your workplace. You don't really have to think about changing your mind. And if you do change your mind, it's like, oh, because the company actually shut down or something crazy like that. And having both left our jobs recently, and also within our jobs, we've both left our like initial roles. So we've transferred departments. How do you feel about like changing your mind, Farah, and leaving something behind and actually being okay with it internally? Like, did you have a process that you went through, or did you like beat yourself up about like not sticking to one thing? Because I also know, side note, I also know that you obviously didn't like, did you study the whole time for the job that you ended up getting? And or did you change your mind with like subjects at school and like little commitments here and there? Did you keep kind of going in and out of things?
Yeah, it's weird when it comes to school stuff or even the job I got because a lot of it wasn't my choice. So I feel like by the time I got to actually being able to choose things for myself, it made me look like I was quitting on things that I originally chose or changed my mind. But when I think back, it actually wasn't even my first choice to do those things. So when it comes to feeling like bad about it though, I think the reason that I felt a bit guilty or felt like I was quitting was because of how long I spent studying for like the job I got, or even when I moved into my grad role that I later moved out of. I studied for 2 years while working and put so much effort and time into those exams and actually passed and built a rapport with my team. To then leave it all behind felt a bit like, oh, why didn't I just like try and stick it out? But at the same time, those things were never my first choice. I never wanted to really be there in the first place. So I kind of owed it to myself while I was in that stage of, being new to a firm and being new to full-time employment in general, to explore and try and see if there was something that was better suited to me. So that's kind of how I talked myself through it. And I think when it came to eventually like leaving the corporate world altogether, because I had tried, like I did move service lines to begin with. I didn't just straight quit cold tech and decide, you know what, I can't do this, it's not for me. I did try and I did end up in a role that was a bit better suited to me. But again, I feel like when you're not meant to be in a space when everything is set up for you in the most perfect way, like you are in a space where you could become partner at one point. You could thrive. You could get the promotions. You have all the support. You have the mentorship. Everything really is stacked up for you. But for some reason, you feel so drained, so miserable in that role, so unfulfilled. And I felt all those things while having so much opportunity to grow and develop and build a network and all the great fluffy things that everyone talks about that you need to be successful in an area. I just didn't want any of it. And I couldn't find peace being there. And even though in the end, to be honest, I was made redundant anyway, so it wasn't really a choice that I made again for myself. It wasn't like, oh, I decided to quit. So, but there would have come a point where I did. That decision just got made for me. And luckily for me anyway, it gave me that little boost and buffer that I could use to then set myself up rather than having to worry about it being my own decision. I feel like it saved me a lot of guilt, actually, the whole process, because it happened to me or for me rather than me doing that to myself.
Yeah, that's so interesting because like it started without your choice or like autonomy over the choice, and then it ended without autonomy over the choice, but then the guilt was like polar opposite at the beginning and the end. And I think that's so interesting what you said about like, oh, the choice of going into something in the first place. I wonder if that like amplifies the guilt even more when you change your mind, because I definitely relate to you in terms of maybe feeling more pressure to make certain decisions around your job or environment. And then because of that pressure, because you change your mind later on, it's like the guilt doubles down in terms of, oh, I did this for a specific person or a specific reason, and now I'm like backing out. It's like you're not just backing out on yourself, you're backing out on the external pressure as well that was on you when you first made that decision. So I think that's really interesting in terms of, okay, how that influences your guilt when you change your mind. So I'm going to start to think about like how I can actually have more autonomy over my choice. And I think that boils down to even how I think about like how much you let external influences control your life. Because I guess if you have more external influences controlling everything, you will always feel more guilty for like if you're, it's basically people pleasing.
Being a letdown, yeah.
Super bluntly, it's like people pleasing on a very like high scale and high impact. And yeah, it feels like you're letting a lot more people down than just yourself, and almost like not even yourself. It's like more on other people. But I want to talk about like specific signs you either notice or that you can look out for as flags that you might actually be outgrowing somewhere. Because I do think that like it's important to actually like keep changing your mind throughout your life, because it keeps you well-rounded. I feel like it builds your understanding of yourself and like your intuition. And I feel like staying in one environment for a really long time is just too comfortable almost. Like you'll stop using your brain as much because you're just kind of like going through the motions of life more and more. And I felt that in audit before I changed service line as well. And like my biggest sign of like, I knew I maybe didn't outgrow it, but I wasn't meant to keep growing in it, was looking at leadership within, like in my environment, like basically what I would be in 5 to 10 years. And just being really uncomfortable at the thought of that happening to me. Basically.
Scared.
Yeah. I was like, I don't want like this. You're telling me that this is a goal, and I actually want to reject that goal, which is a very different feeling for me. And I don't know if you can relate to this, but like my problem with goal setting is that like I don't know how big or how specific to get, but my problem isn't like, oh, I don't know what goal to set. Whereas I feel like in audit, the goal was like being given. And I was like, I don't want that. Like I actively know that that's not right for me. And it was probably because I could see it as well. You could like in all bigger corporate firms, you can see what life looks like a few years ahead of you, like 5 to 10 years ahead of you. You're working with those people, so you know that like you're about to step into their shoes. Like nothing's going to change much apart from you as a person being in that role. So that was a big sign for me. And also the comfort. Like I feel like when you're comfortable, it's a big sign that like you might be starting to outgrow somewhere, which I feel can be like a little contradictory in terms of the feeling that you should have before you need to leave a place or even a relationship sometimes.
Yeah, I guess the comfort's a weird one because you will at some point become more comfortable when you've settled in somewhere. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's not room for growth, but that general sense of, oh, I feel like I belong, maybe. But I honestly felt like I never got to that place really, which is the flip side of feeling like, oh, maybe I'm not meant to be in this environment because of the struggle I had with actually becoming comfortable with being in that space to begin with. So I guess there's like two sides to that coin of getting comfortable and not being able to like grow your skills any further, or just kind of not stepping outside your comfort zone and growing as a person because you're stuck in this place. But I don't know, I also really resonate with seeing like leadership or people that are more senior and more senior roles in that team, and realizing actually what I realized was they were miserable with their roles, and I think that just put me off as well because I was like, I don't want to end up like that. Like I don't even like what I'm doing now, and I almost did get scared at the thought of being promoted and getting to a higher grade because that meant I had to do more of this job that I really didn't enjoy, and I had more responsibility on my head on top. And the only motivating factor for me at that point was money, which I think, okay, yeah, we all go to work to get paid, but I feel like there is a level where you should really be kind of interested in what you're doing day to day, and, you know, feel like you're maybe making a difference, or feel like there is something more than just the money that's the benefit to it. And I got to a stage where I genuinely didn't have any other benefit other than getting paid, which is obviously a great benefit to have from a job. Like you want to be in well-paid jobs, but for me, it was just like, there's got to be more that a job can offer me than the money alone.
Yeah, it was that feeling of like being underwhelmed, I feel like, with everything, and feeling like there must be more out there. Like that's just an innate feeling. I can't even put that into like a sign that you need to.
Isn't it? Which can apply to other scenarios too, but it's that feeling of, yeah, there's so much more that you could do as an individual as well. Like you're not really reaching your best potential because you just kind of pigeonholed yourself into this place where you already know you don't really fit, and that's what makes it more tricky. And I think another sign that I noticed, and this can apply to other scenarios as well, is feeling like you have to shrink yourself, or feeling like you can't actually be your full self in an environment. I feel like that's a huge sign that you're not in the right environment. And that's not even just a work setting, that's maybe in friendships or relationships that you have external to that. Is if you're feeling like that, then you're not ever going to reach your full potential because you're constantly feeling like you have to make yourself small, or you have to make yourself fit into the box that you put yourself in, i.e. the environment that you're in, when realistically what you should be doing is just removing yourself from that environment altogether and finding space where you can actually be yourself and you can grow into yourself more rather than, you know, pulling back. So, and I've been in those situations so many times, but I never realized that it was what I was doing, or that it was the environment that was the problem and not me. I always felt like, oh, automatically reverting to me, oh, I'm too much of this or I'm too little of that, when actually I just wasn't in the right environment, full stop.
Yeah, I think that's really hard to like to be okay, not be okay with, but even identify within yourself, because I think being able to see that it's your environment holding back takes so much self-belief. And I think self-belief is something like a lot of people lack, including myself. Like it's a really hard part of yourself to like build up, especially in your early 20s, because like I said, I feel like we built like a lot of our experiences are shaped by like external validation. And when you don't have that self-belief because you're kind of essentially people pleasing all the time, it's really hard. It's like so hard to look at your environment and think, I am better leaving this, because you don't even like, you don't even have this trust that leaving an environment is okay for you. It's like more scary to do that because of the lack of self-belief. So I feel like really honing in on like your own potential and like understanding that you're worth something without your environment is almost an easy way to then be able to spot the environments that don't serve you, and then it's easier to actually walk away from those as well. So it's like an even deeper thing to do. It's like working on yourself on a much deeper level, and then like the environments are just so much easier to fall away from when you don't fit into them in the right way as well. And I think that definitely really happened to me in consulting. So like after I left audit and moved into consulting, which is the last role I had before becoming self-employed, that's when like my self-belief really started to build, because I like similarly to you, like I went from just less the redundancy. I went from corporate to self-employed, which I think is a huge jump in terms of like trust and like psychological safety. Because, okay, it's one thing to think, okay, this department isn't right for me to grow. This specific industry is not the right one I see my future in. I'll just change to a different one where I still know, like psychologically, I'm still going to get my salary. So I've got benefits. I've still got skills I can just adjust. Whereas corporate to self-employed is like, okay, now I have to earn my own pennies. I have to like set up and run my own like legal business. I have to charge for like what I feel like I'm worth. Like all of these things are so centered on your own sense of self compared to corporate, that like for me, making that transition and like knowing it was the right time to leave was all down to like self-belief. I think I've talked to you about like in a previous episode, like 75 hard really helped with that, which is like such a random link, because I was doing 75 hard in the weeks leading up to me handing my notice, and it was like five weeks of 75 hard, and I suddenly like I felt more trust in myself to be able to like handle self-employment, which is like a big thing I think for like leaving any environment or changing your mind. Is like, well, do you actually believe in the next step? Like, do you believe you can change your mind and be okay? I think that's a big part of like not feeling like a failure by quote unquote quitting. But what about you? How do you feel about like your like transition from corporate to self-employed? Do you feel like there was anything that would have stopped you from making the decision had the redundancy not happened?
I felt like I said, there would have come a time where I did pull the plug myself. It's just that it didn't.
You say
It's
that,
just
but
that
like, would there? Because I feel like it's really like easy. Like if I didn't do 75 hard, it would have been so easy to just.
I was so close though, Dev. It wasn't actually that easy. I felt like it was getting to a point where it was actually harder for me to stay than to have just like stopped altogether. I was just in a period of time, and I think maybe, I don't know, it's so weird because obviously I will never know. Maybe I would still be there right now. Who knows actually, but I do feel like even mentally I did get to a place where I knew I couldn't really do it anymore. And I don't know, it's weird because only after I did leave and then I went through the process of transitioning to self-employment, only then did I actually grow the confidence in what I was doing in my self-employed life. I didn't really have that confidence before, which is probably why I would have probably stuck it out a bit longer, because the confidence wasn't there to depend on myself and know that I could stand on my own 2 feet. But it was just really, like, I knew that lifestyle wasn't for me. Like, I was suffering so much, like, physically with my PMDD and stuff. Like, mentally, I wasn't with it. At that point in time, I also was going through all that, like, stuff family wise and things. And I think everything was taking a toll on me anyway, that I remember the mindset I was in, and I was very close actually myself. It's just so weird that it happened the way it happened and that I didn't have to do it myself. And I got paid to leave anyway. So it happened in the best possible way, in my opinion. And I'm actually very, very grateful for how everything turned out, because it really did take the pressure off me, in the sense that I was pushed into a situation where I just had to make do. I didn't really, I mean, I had choices. I could have gone and applied for a new job. I had plenty of opportunities to, I don't know, move into a different service line or do X, Y, and Z. Like, there were other options for me. I just chose not to take them. But the fact of the matter was, like, that actual job that I was doing day to day didn't exist anymore. So I didn't have a choice in staying in what I was doing. So I think that made it a lot easier on me, in terms of, because I'm the type of person, I will just make do with my situation in what way I have to. Like, I will make things work when I have to make them work. So I was very much in the mindset of not trying to get bogged down with, like, the stress of the fact that that was happening to me, because I hate looking at things from that lens. But if I'd done it to myself, I feel like my mindset probably would have been a bit different, because I would have maybe just eaten myself alive in my head, in terms of thinking, have I made a big mistake? Like, I've done this to myself. And there would have been a lot of probably more negative self-talk, because I would have put myself in that vulnerable position where I didn't have a job anymore and I had to stand on my own 2 feet. And I think my mentality and the way I went about things might have been a bit different. But at the same time, if I put myself in that situation, I probably would have gone for it a lot harder, in terms of that self-employed life and my content and how I approach the next phase of my life. I probably would have been a bit more in the hustle mode to begin with, because I knew that I'd done that on my own terms. But because I didn't, I did take a bit of a softer approach, and I had a bit of a buffer because of the redundancy pay and things like that. So it didn't, I don't know, it affected me in probably a different way. But I feel like coming out of it, I have really changed actually as a person. I don't know if that's because of everything else that happened in the same time, or if it's because of the fact I do a completely different job now. I work for myself. I'm not answering to anyone anymore, and I don't feel that pressure to constantly conform to other people. I felt like that a lot. And as people pleasers, you are constantly just performing for other people all the time. And that got so exhausting. And I always felt like I was just in this space where I couldn't really be myself. And so when I came out of that, it really changed everything, because I was being myself for a living at that point. Like, that was the only option. So it really changed my confidence and the way that I actually, like, just approached my life as a whole, because then I started just being more intentional with things. And that's when I started looking into self-development more, and I just had more time for myself as well. So I feel like it just impacted me as a whole. So I'm really happy I made that move, but I also do feel like, because I already knew what I was meant to do or what I wanted to do before that even happened, before I got made redundant, before I even left the firm, because I was already doing social media beforehand. I knew what my interests were and I knew where they lied. I feel like I probably would have been the opposite if I'd come out of that situation, had to try something else from scratch and new again. And I feel like it can be very easy to have a confidence knock when you try something new and you feel like you failed, or you don't like it and you want to give up, and you try something new again and that's not quite right, and you don't like how that felt, and you're not quite sure if you want to continue with that. And I feel like at that stage, you probably do have a confidence hit, and maybe that gives you a dip in your confidence, just because you're feeling like, oh, I'm trying and failing, and I'm trying and failing, and I'm not getting to where I feel like I should be. So I feel like I was quite lucky that I already knew what I wanted to do outside of what I was doing in my full-time work before I even made it my full-time thing. Because I know there's probably a lot of people out there that really don't like their full-time job and they're really not interested in what they're doing full-time, and it's not really where they see themselves in 40 years time, but they also have no idea what other path it is out there for them, and they don't know what they would do instead. So to those people, I would say figure that out now. You don't have to wait until you're kicked out or you want to quit or you reach your wit's end and you've had enough. Like, you can start that process now to figure out what is the right environment for you, what is it that lights you up. And that's why we've talked so much previously about hobbies and, you know, finding your purpose outside of your 9 to 5 and the work that you're doing, finding that extra time where you can to explore those things while you're in a space that you're not particularly happy with or you're outgrowing. Kind of preempt those things and do it in advance, because then you leave less room for yourself feeling really trapped and feeling like really demoralized and feeling like you've lost confidence in yourself because you're kind of waiting for that thing to pop in your lap and you're waiting for something to arrive that you don't even have any idea what it could be at that point in time. So it's always best to start experimenting as soon as possible, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like what you were saying in terms of like, oh, being okay with like stopping, starting and changing your mind and like actually making that decision as well. I've heard, there's like a quote I've heard about like it's a train analogy. It's something around like, if you feel like you're on the wrong train, you should just get off at the next stop, even if it costs more money, because the longer you stay on the train, the more expensive the return trip is going to cost you from being like at the wrong destination or going to the wrong destination or something like that. And I feel like that's so true, because it's like, have you heard of like the sunk cost fallacy as well? Yeah, so like I think about this a lot because I feel like it really impacts my decision making sometimes, where like the longer you've spent on something, whether it's like time or money or effort, the more of that you put into something, the more of yourself you feel like you owe it. And I felt that a lot in corporate in terms of like, oh, I've already spent like 5, almost 6 years here. Why am I about to like throw 6 years away? When really the question I should have asked myself was like, well, am I willing to just like park the 6 years, or do I want to throw the next 20 away because I'm too scared to make this decision, right? But I also want to go back to what you said like right at the beginning, when you were like, oh, it was harder to stay at the point where you did get made redundant and you were close to actually making that decision yourself. What do you mean by harder? Because like, do you think that the things that were making it harder for you to stay were like your version of like signs that it was time to stage left?
I feel like, yeah, there were definitely versions of signs of when you should probably leave an environment where something's not meant for you and where you kind of need to find like your place. Because I think I found it difficult in more ways than one. Like mentally, I was just really not with it. I was working at that particular time, I was on a project that I really didn't enjoy and I didn't expect to be involved in either. It kind of just happened off the cuff. And there was just a lot of situations that I was involved in that I just wasn't happy with. And I just felt trapped. I felt like I was stuck in a situation that I kind of put myself in and I didn't know how to get out of. There were a bunch of situations that I found myself in that I was just finding uncomfortable, and it just made me enjoy the job less, and it just made it physically difficult for me like every single day to have the motivation to continue doing my job. And I just felt that friction build and build and build. And I think it had been already building for a while because it didn't happen overnight. Like there was a big length of time that I always kind of wanted to try a different career route and option. And I didn't really want to be in the corporate world actually that much. It was more of like an ego thing, or just to, you know, make other people feel like they could be proud of me and, you know, see me as successful. It was never really, if I look at my goals in life, it wasn't one of my actual goals. It was an external goal, a goal that was kind of placed for me. So it wasn't something that was ever something I wanted to do. It was just something I felt like I had to do. And the longer I did it and the longer I found myself in situations where I wasn't enjoying what I was doing, and I was realizing that it just was like draining all the energy out of me, I then, yeah, found it a lot harder to actually function in that environment than I did find it hard to think about leaving. Because at a point, I thought about leaving every single day, and I would have conversations about that every single day. But I just didn't have the guts to until the decision was made for me. So
Yeah, I think that's so right, because it's like, and I think you as someone who's like quite intuitive, I would say as well, maybe it was like almost like you can be more guided by your feelings when it comes to whether things feel off. Like, okay, an easy one to pick up on as, okay, my values are off because the work I'm doing does not align with like what I believe about the world. And I feel like that's like an almost easier thing to spot. But when you start somewhere and like you have this initial enthusiasm and excitement and motivation, and maybe those feelings last for like a while, like maybe a year or two, and then they suddenly start to dip, you start to question like, well, is it me? Is it my intuition? Or is it my environment? Like, what is wrong right now? And it's easy to think that there's something wrong with you and that like you are the problem, and like, oh, you need to just like suck it up. You need to just like get more vitamin D and like eat a nicer meal or something like that. And the actual reason might just be that, okay, your environment is just maybe keeping you a bit smaller and you need a bit more alignment in that way. And I think what I really just want to get across in this episode is that it's okay to actually do that. And I feel like the best way to facilitate being okay with changing your mind and not feeling like a quitter or a failure for doing so is just finding other people who've done it and like either staying in contact with them or being around them more often. Because I feel like that, like the bars that you set for yourself in your life and all your little micro environments that you spend time in, like whether that's like personal friendships, work friendships, romantic relationships, all of these things, you need to be mindful of like what the behaviors in all of those micro environments are, because they'll be the signals to you of like what's okay and not okay. And if you're surrounded by loads of people who have been like loyal to their, like if we're talking about a corporate context or a workplace context, they've been loyal to their workplaces like their entire lives so far, you might feel like the odd one out who keeps changing their mind. Whereas maybe if you're around like more, I guess, like flexible people or people who do change their mind a lot, it would feel more okay. Like that's just like a simple change in that way. And for me, because of social media and like the fact that I'm in like little business communities, I'm surrounded by people who like have multiple jobs, who are doing multiple contracts, who are freelance sometimes, but then will like dip into a job because they want to, and life feels a lot more flexible. And that makes me feel like life in general is a lot more flexible. So I feel okay like changing my mind a lot, because I really used to think I used to actively call myself like flaky, had commitment problems, when really I don't. And I'm not flaky. I just like, I want to find something that is aligned with me. And also, side tip, just before we close off the episode, do a personality test, because I've said this in like previous episodes, but if you do personality tests and figure out what kind of person you are in terms of like your likes and interests and like the way you thrive, I have realized that, I forgot what it was called. Like there's a specific one, I might put it in the show notes, but the kind of personality test that was told me that I'm a person who thrives when I've got like multiple things going on. So it's okay that I keep like changing my mind between things, because that's actually more in line with how I am born to work according to the stars, which I do believe in. But yeah, I thought that was worth throwing in there, because as much as we're talking about like the signs and like how to leave somewhere feeling good about it, you need to feel good about it. Like you can't beat yourself up about your own decisions, whether they're externally influenced or not, because that will influence your next one. And how you feel about all your entire life. And it all comes back down to that self-belief, I think, as well. So that's us for this week. I hope you really enjoyed that episode. And if you're watching or listening on YouTube, please like and subscribe and turn on the little notification bell. And if you're listening on Spotify, please give us a little rating and follow the show. Same on Apple Podcasts. And we will catch you next week. Bye.
Bye.